We believe health is the foundation that unlocks freedom. The freedom to live fully, to be an asset and not a burden, and to chase what truly matters. Through daily practices and proven frameworks, we are here to help you build deep health, find lasting peace, and live with your heart on fire. Welcome to the chase. Hello and welcome to another episode of Chasing Excellence. Thank you, as always, for joining us. How are you, Ben?
Doing great. Thanks, Patrick.
My friend, we've got a question from Dora. A bit of a long one, but I'm going to get through the whole thing. She says, we have incredibly kind neighbors who like to hang out with us outside while the kids are playing around us. I really love these people, so I have to emphasize that I don't judge them. I just acknowledge that they have different habits, life, and values. As a result, their teenage children are already obese and their 2-year-old is overweight. A few days ago, they invited us over for the first time. The TV was turned on in the playroom, and they were immediately offering chips to the kids. So the kids were mindlessly eating while the teenagers were also constantly checking their phones. I then understood that this quote unquote mindless eating is the reason they keep gaining weight. While the neighbors' children enjoy playing outside, they can't always keep up with my kids. And in 20 to 30 minutes, I find them sitting on the bench playing on their phones instead. This is something I would really love to avoid later on. How do I raise them so they'll enjoy moving more than screens? I think I'm doing okay on the mindful eating part, but my 4-year-old is already asking when he can get a phone because his older friends love to play games and he also wants to try. He has kindergarten friends who already have phones, although it's fortunately not the norm. I've accepted the fact that he is going to use a phone in the future and see all kinds of things that he will not yet be mature to encounter, but I just don't want him to then forget the values that I've taught him, and I'm quite a bit anxious about this generation's future regarding technology. So I've got some follow-ups, but I'd love your just kind of initial take from Dora's question.
I think there's two main things at the root of, or to address, to chat about. The first is obviously what the question is: how do we navigate the technology, the screens and the phones?
Yep.
And the next is spending time with people that are living vastly different lifestyles and values that we have, especially with our kids who are so easily influenced.
Yep.
So let's take the latter first. Here's in terms of spending time with these people that you really like, you really enjoy spending time with. We're not here to, as she said, to pass judgment, but what we are here to do is to help where help is wanted. And we might not know if help is wanted here in this case. So I don't think it's our place to push this on them, meaning invite them over to your house for an at-home workout, right? Like, we might not get to that point. I'm not saying don't do that, but to me, that would be a big leap in the beginning. She mentioned that she went over to their house for the first time. So this is not a long-standing relationship. She's really enjoys spending time with them, but she just went to their house for the first time. I would really encourage her, the parents and the kids, to come over to your house. The next 3 play dates should be at your house. And I know that when they're at your house, you probably spend most of the time outside. And sounds like until the kids get tired, and it's probably the end of it. But have them at your house and then bring them inside. And what do your kids do when they're inside? And what do they snack on? What do they eat? And just share your lifestyle with them. These people might be befriending you because they see how vibrant and energetic and healthy you seem, and they might be incredibly curious on how you do it. And if we never bring them into our world, they will not have eyes on that and will still be in the dark and have very low levels of awareness of what it could look like otherwise. So I would have the next 3 play dates or otherwise be at your house and spend time inside and have them snack. Then from there, I would have the next play date be at a playground, or even better, go for a hike or something along that end, right? Maybe if it's summertime, you're going to a beach and you're just swimming or doing water sports, but doing something active. So you're showing this is our norm. This is the way we operate. And maybe they get even more curious because then they become aware of the gap in terms of the capacities at which they could operate. And then it becomes like, hey, wow, this is crazy. You guys do us like the levels of curiosity about eat, sleep, train, think, and connect pop up. And now you have those connections. And as we've always talked about, I think the first place to go is join me 10 o'clock on Saturday for a little workout in the garage, and make it something that they can be successful with. Like, oh my gosh, this is always like, if you want to teach your kids how to ski, make sure the first 3 times they go skiing, it's warm, sunny, and not icy. Like 101 of creating spark and interest. Yeah. Make it something that they enjoy. Okay, so that's like the first part of that conversation, and we can double back on that. The next part is the screens component. And yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard because it's so prevalent. And I think that we really quickly fall into the victim mindset here, most of us. And we go, gosh, and our kids are on, but when I was a kid and our generation has to deal with in the 1940s, there was no TV. By the 1970s, every kid was watching Saturday morning cartoons in every household in America. And those parents were probably having the same conversations we were about, I never did this stuff. The best I did was listen to a after dinner radio show where we sat down together, but no one ever stared at a screen, and no one got absorbed. No one got in this tunnel vision and this absorption where we were all together as a family when we did. This is not unique to us. We are not special in terms of the struggles that we are facing. This is the struggles of a parent. And it's going to be the struggles of the next generation and the next generation, just like it was before us and before us. Before the TV, it was the radio. Before the radio, it was something else. I'm not smart enough to know what that thing was. But it's always going to be this thing where we wish our kids were doing something more proactive, more active, more in line with the visions and values of what we want them to grow up to be, and probably has something to do with academics or athletics. So that's the first place I would start, is go, this is not your unique special struggle. And what I mean by that is like your generation's unique special struggle. This is just something that's always been the case for parents. And then, we have to figure out ways to navigate it. And it's not a hindrance. It's not a burden that we need to overcome as parents. It's just part of raising healthy kids. So that's that high level aspect to this. Now, how do we get into the actual tactics and strategies of how to navigate this thing? That's always the more fun conversation, because it's really tactical and you can put them in place, but also recognize that these are all arbitrary and none of them are right. It's just the way that different people, it's nutrition. The same thing as nutrition. We have to understand the principles, the high level principles of nutrition, but whether you do macros, ketos, zone, paleo, or anything else, those are all just tactics, and they can all work different for different people. So the tactics that I use for my kids is based off of the multifactorial environment of our family life. It is not something that could necessarily be picked up and moved and placed into Patrick's family. And what Patrick does can't be picked up and moved into someone else's family, because you'd have to move everything. Patrick works at home in his backyard in the man shed, and they're a couple miles from the beach, and his kids are this old and this old. And Patrick was raised this way and his wife was raised this way. And when they were younger, they did this. There's so many different factors. So as we talk about the tactics, they're the sexy, cool, fun things, but it's really not the thing. The thing is the high level principles, and then the understanding of how to apply those. So having said all of that, I think just being really clear is the biggest thing. And that's I came across this thing, and we've talked about this on the podcast before. As parenting, I think one of the best piece of advice I could give to new parents is to follow through on your threats. And that's a weird way of saying, the other way of saying that is keep your promises.
Yeah, I was going to say, you could also flip that and just say promises.
Yes, just keep your promises. Meaning, if the rules in the house, if you promised that kids have a couple hours on Saturday and Sunday mornings, Friday night, so basically it's the weekend, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday morning, they have iPad time. If friends are over after dinner on the weekends and everyone's doing their gaming thing, because that's what kids like to do a lot, especially Northeast in the winter where they're probably not, going and playing kick the can or manhunt or any of those games that we played as kids, then we'll do that as well. But there is no screen time during the week unless we're on a long car ride. Long car rides are the exception to that. Now, we have a mutual friend, Max. He has a young child and they've traveled in planes and she's never seen a screen. She's never been put in front of a screen. That's burly. That's really hard because everyone knows how the screens are pacifiers. So the suggestion is not no screens, not what we're doing, not what Patrick's doing, but the suggestion is very clear rules of engagement.
Yep.
And then follow through on those. Whatever the thing is, like if you don't go and brush your teeth right now, you're not getting the iPad on Saturday morning. Whatever that threat is, that weird thing that parents, say on if they don't brush their teeth, or if you don't clean your room, then you don't get your iPad on Saturday morning. And if the kid doesn't clean his room, that can't fall as an empty threat. You really need to follow through on those things. And it is amazing the difference when you do and you don't follow through on those things. It's just crazy. And you're really doing yourself a favor. In the short term, it's going to be harder because we know how much easier it is to have your kids on the iPad for 2 hours while you go and do your breath work, yoga, and workout Saturday morning. And if they're not doing that, they're coming and bugging you, or they're bickering with each other, or they're making forts in the living room that you need to pick up later on. It's so much easier. But you have to do the hard thing of that Saturday. It's a punch. You are going to end up being punished for it. But in the long run, it pays off so much.
Let's pause to say thanks to a few sponsors, and we'll be right back to the conversation. We're brought to you by Factor Meals, the game-changing meal delivery service that brings chef-crafted, dietitian-approved gourmet meals right to your feet. Head to factormeals.com/excellence50off. That's the number 50 off, and use that code excellence50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. You know what I love about Factor is how they've made healthy, tasty meals so stinking easy. Their meals arrive fresh and fully prepared, and they need just a couple minutes to heat and enjoy. My personal favorite is their Protein Plus meals, which make it just a little bit easier to hit my lazy macros. With 40 different options across 8 dietary preferences, you'll find meals that perfectly align with your health goals, whether you're following a keto diet or looking for calorie smart options. Plus, they've thought of everything from wholesome smoothies to convenient breakfasts and grab and go snacks, making it incredibly easy to maintain your nutrition goals throughout the day. Transform your nutrition journey today by visiting factormeals.com/excellence50off and use that code excellence50off, the number 50, to get 50% off your first box. We're brought to you by Element, the clean, science-backed electrolyte drink mix that's changing how people think about hydration. Go to drinkelement.com/excellence to get your free sample pack when you make a purchase of any of their other products. Proper hydration is not just about drinking water, it's about maintaining the right balance of essential electrolytes. That's why Element contains the optimal ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium with zero sugar or artificial ingredients. Human beings report better energy, mental clarity, and fewer headaches when they get their electrolytes right. Sorry about the rhyme right there. Get your free Element sample pack now when you make a purchase at drinkelement.com/excellence. That's the letters LMNT. It's a great way to taste the entire rainbow of Element flavors. Again, that's drinkelement.com/excellence. Okay, now let's get back to the show. The thing I would love to unpack a little bit more, because I think it reflects both on kind of each one of those angles that you just took, is just the power of influence and recognizing the power of influence, not only in our own lives, but obviously with our kids as well, right? So who is influencing who in sort of your first answer, which I loved, which is like, take back the influencer influencee scenario. If you go to somebody's house and they're on their iPad and they're eating chips and they're doing, the environment that we're in dictates what is influencing us, even as adults. And certainly when our kids are involved. And so if this is what we do around here, which is kind of a phrase, this idea that we've talked about a little bit here, what we do around here is incredibly powerful and influential. And so recognizing that if we find ourselves in a position where like, I don't like the rules here, it's because whatever the rules are here is influencing the behavior and the feelings and the vibe. And if we want to change that or we don't like that, we need to put ourselves in a position where either those things are better or we are the one influencing, which is why I love your advice is bring them over to your house, because then the power dynamic flips. It then becomes they're entering into your environment. They're entering into your definition of what we do around here. And I guess at least in Dora's case, she clearly has a preference for one versus the other. And so I like that. And I think that's really powerful to remember that we are always being influenced, and we always have the ability to influence either the environment or the people we're in. Come on over. We're going to do a workout. That could be incredibly powerful. Maybe this individual, this neighbor, has never had anybody who's influenced them in that direction. Maybe they grew up a certain way, to your point about all the context that goes around. Maybe their family does this. Maybe her parents taught her this. And she hasn't ever had a friend say, come on over, we're going to do this and we're going to do a workout and then we're going to hang out and chat for 30 minutes, whatever it might be. And so recognizing that we have the power to influence as much as we can fall victim to other people influencing us is really, really powerful.
Yeah, it's so well said. When we put together that 100 words of health, it started with create an environment in which it makes it easy to eat, sleep, train, think, connect well. It's totally the environment. And yes, when you're in somebody else's environment, I don't think you're exaggerating it when you say you're giving up the power. And because that's really what that is. It goes back to the question we were talking about earlier in terms of when you're in a bureaucratic organization, you're giving up the power in terms of creating the rules of the organization. It's not yours. When you're an entrepreneur, you have the power to create this thing in the light of your vision. And I think it's a really great call out that if you're struggling with your kids in other environments, keep them in control, like keep them in your environment. There may be extenuating circumstances where it's not as easy. Maybe they live next door to the school and you live 15 miles from school. So it'd be really weird if after school, if the kids came over to your house, only for the parents to have to, it would be, it's things like that happen that become really obvious when you have the kids in elementary school for as long as we have. But as much as possible, I would really try to pull them into your environment. And to your point, where you started this is like, don't underestimate the power of influence, not only with environment. You've talked about this a lot, but the power of a person, of a singular person. And I really like and appreciate when you talk about this, the power of a singular person to change the trajectory of your life. And yes, this person may have never had a person in their lives that had health as a awareness point at all. Because I think that's more common than, for sure, the people that listen to our podcast probably realize is the norm is not to be one of us. We are not the norm. The normal people do not spend hours a day thinking about how to optimize their vitality, life force, energy, and fulfillment. That's why it's so cool that we found this community that we can share this conversation with, because that is who we are. But this is one of the things that when during COVID, we had a couple neighbors that we didn't know at all. And when we met them during COVID, we created a little bubble with these two other families, and they became some of our very, very, very best friends. When we met them, they did not do CrossFit. They did not eat the way that we do. They started coming over to our house. Our house was the meeting point. And now they are as dedicated members of our gym as anyone else that we've had. And, it's a big part of their lives now. And I think it's really for the simple fact that our house was the meeting point. I think if somebody else's house was the meeting point, it would have been very different. We're shaped by our environment.
last question I've got, maybe a little bit closer to the tactic side of things, which is, your kids are a bit older than mine, so I haven't really needed to get to this point yet, but do you have conversations with your kids, Bodie and Harley specifically, about screens, about why the rules are the way they are? Or is it just like, no, we don't do them in the week, but you do them on Friday and Saturday, Sunday, and kind of leave it at that? And the sort of the analogy or the comparison is how you talk about nutrition in the house as well. Like, are they comparable enough that it's worth talking about, or are they so different that they're not?
Heather hates the screens. So this conversation is always prevalent. She thinks of screens the way I think of sugar and processed foods. Like, I think sugar and processed foods have the potential to kill you. And she thinks the same thing about screens. She's like, you are wasting your life. She's not shy about the values that we placed on what they're doing. And anyone that has spent time researching this or even watched lightly The Social Dilemma or anything close to that, I think recognizes her perspective and how it's maybe not as extreme as it sounds, how dangerous screens can be. But yes, we do have those conversations. Our kids are very aware of it. It doesn't mean that they don't want it. It's the same thing with sugar. Like, if we have all the conversation we want about sugar, when Halloween comes, they're still eating the sugar. Like, when they go to a birthday, they still want the cake. It's a incredibly alluring, fun, pleasurable thing that taps into our hormonal system to where it overrides a lot of the willpower that you might have. So we do talk a lot about it. And this is one of the things I think is why our approach of this, we're not saying no. We're just saying in these buckets works fairly well, because they can do it just like they can have some sugar, but we're putting it in context and in constraints. It's not just, no, you can't do that, without any context in terms of why not. We talk about the why not. And then it's not, you can't never do this. It's in a certain constraint of when it can, as EC would say, it's dose dependent.
Thank you very much for tuning into the show. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening or watching so you do not miss another episode. For more frameworks and daily practices, visit chasingexcellence.email. And don't forget to tap the link in the show notes for today's full listener guide, where we break down the key ideas and provide actionable steps to help you put them into practice. Until next time, keep building health, finding freedom, and living with your heart on fire.